Most people think to stand out in this business, you need to be the first one on top of the story or the person with the loudest voice or the biggest ratings. In truth, to stand out in the news business, you just need to ask the right questions and demand the right answers.
INN. Provoke, inform, and change. We deal with issues that other networks won't.
Academia University. Open, free, that means no tuition, with no entrance restrictions. Well, hello everybody, welcome back to the next edition of INN's Tweet Line Plus. Let me give you a time and date stamp. It is 11 hours and 27 minutes into the day of Friday, December 16th, 2016. Yeah, we've begun our day. It's another news day. What's going on is that does seem to be a coup going on. Clinton's New World Order, her UN New World Order, is trying to take over the United States. People say, "Well, why is Clinton doing this? Why is it, not she? Why is it doing this?" And people say, well, it's all just Hillary Clinton. It's, this is her last grasped attempt at to be president and so on and so forth. But they miss. And this is what I was hearing at Lionel Nation has sort of picked up that sort of perspective that this is Hillary's last ditch attempt to sort of become President of the United States. Excuse me. But it's actually more significant than that. There is a larger aspect to this that is being missed. And so what happens is, look, the Trump supporter, or the person who voted for Trump in some respect, were now talking positively about Trump, or they're now or people who are just now people who are now just talking positively about Trump, because Lionel didn't actually vote for Trump. He voted for himself. He wrote his own name in as a write-in candidate, and that was his position into this. He expected up to the election that Donald Trump wouldn't win, that Hillary would be selected. He was talking about the selection, the 2016 selection, where Hillary Clinton would have been selected as President of the United States, and was, I think, rather surprised when Trump actually won. I think a lot of people were surprised when Trump won. There wasn't the expectation that Trump was supposed to win. And what happens is this throws a lot of the conspiracy theory of insider this and insider that out the window, because, well, if everything is so fixed and rigged, then why did he win? And this is where things kind of swung around. While things weren't fixed, they weren't rigged. And so now, there's this whole battle over the so-called popular vote, or did Trump actually win? Was there, influence peddling by Russia? Did Russia interfere with the election? And a lot of these people kind of stumped now. They don't really know how to answer this, because they had taken the position that the elections were so rigged that there was no way that Trump could win. And that they're looking at this perspective from what they saw in the primaries, what Hillary Clinton did to Bernie Sanders. And this was what was supposed to happen. Hillary Clinton was supposed to do to Donald Trump what she did to Bernie Sanders. But that didn't occur. And people don't necessarily understand why this isn't the case. And it's very simple. They don't understand that socialism, everybody sort of falls in with each other. There is no one individual who leads or this or that. So both Bernie Sanders and Jill Stein did what a socialist, a progressive, these pedophile progressives do. They fold in. And the thing is that this is what it's about. It's about pedophilia. It's about the spirit cooking. It's about falling in line. I think if you look back at the history of socialism, where it comes from the left-hand path. Socialism emerges from the left-hand path thinking. You follow the people behind socialism, the philosophers who brought it forward. They were left-hand path people. They were Kabbalists. They were within these secret societies that follow the left-hand path. And what is the left-hand path? That's the path to demonization. They were in league with demons. Of course, some of them called them aliens and have a whole variety of mixed understandings. Let's call it that way. This is what the Vril Society was for the Nazis. This is what the Masons and the Illuminati are to the socialists, to Bill Clinton, to the UN, to all the different organizations that form the UN. They're all on the left-hand path of things. And you see, no matter where the left-hand path has shown up, no matter where socialism has popped up, this is where you see the pedophile rings. And the thing is, because people don't keep track of history, there is no sort of sense of history here. They don't know what's happening. They don't know what's going on. And they have a hard time parsing the information that comes to them, saying, well, how do I understand this is connected to this? And how do, where is this information? Because if you haven't collected the information, if you don't have the bits and pieces together already, then you're not going to understand it, because you're missing bits and pieces of the puzzle. And of course, these bits and pieces are not going to be out there, obviously all over the place. They're not going to be obvious. You're not going, oh yeah, that's about, excuse me. You're not going to go say. They're not going to go say, hey, yeah, that's a piece right there, and the piece is going to be perfectly visible. It's going to be embedded in things. So you have to go through, do your research, and that's it. The best pieces that I've pulled out come from people who I don't agree with, specifically, in terms of how they conclude things. Their information was good. You say, you go there, you take the information down, you take your notes, and you just start doing a background checking to see, you're not fact checking. This is a whole misunderstanding. There is no such thing as fact checking. Anyone who's telling you they're doing fact checking is talking about propaganda. They're going to give you an alternative view to the fact check. In other words, they're going to give you the propaganda line. They're going to confirm the propaganda if it's propaganda. They are not going to stand up against the establishment. They are actually in many cases the establishment. Even these debunkers, they're not going to bring forward the information that is necessary to say, oh yes, these people are wrong here. The debunker will simply put up some minor objections and posit some questions, make some ponderances without answering them, and state that this is sufficient to say that's no longer proof. They have no proof here, that this is fiction, that is not real, it's fake news. In other words, they don't really have to prove anything that is fake news. They simply have to put on a show of this, and they use, more often than not, they use their authorized knowledge to say that's wrong, without actually going and checking and say, okay, well, is this indeed the situation? And this is why here, I don't talk necessarily about statistics and demographics. I prefer, this is talking more about going back to Kiki Green and Lisa Haven. There's your demographics right there. It's better to see the demographics in people, to see the people behind the demographics, than simply to talk about the demographics itself. And this is why I have the links to Kiki Green and to Lisa Haven below. And you can go back to see Young Turks. You can go back to see the David Pakman show. You can see how their establishment. And the two new links that I have that we're going to talk about in the sort of the second segment, the middle segment there, is how a news item can be taken from one side. Let's say NP, and this we'll talk about Obama's declaring war on Russia. How we can take the news article, the news bit, from the left-hand side, which supports the establishment, take it to the right-hand side under Fox News, and actually have the same establishment view come out. In other words, to see that they're on the same sides of the coin. That the Republican and Democrat dynamic is really not too far off. Why? Because if you fall back and see who the neocons are, the neocons, Lindsey Graham, Senator John McCain, and I can't remember what his name is. There's another one in there. He's now an independent. That they're all AIPAC members and they're all neocons, but they are all also Kabbalists. They are the Canaanite-Jews. They're on that society, part of that fence there. When we come back, we'll take a look. We're back for our second segment here, and we're going to take a look at seeing the declaration of war by Obama. Obama comes out and basically issues what can be inferred as a declaration of war. And you'll see how this sort of plays out. And now you'll understand why the media is talking about Russia. What about all this hacking stuff that's going on? Why the focus on the hacking now and about what Russia is doing? Is they're laying the groundwork for war. The establishment is laying the groundwork for war with Russia. A third world war that will kill millions of people. And this is from an interview on NPR with Obama.
There's another issue going forward. Is it necessary for the security of the United States that Russia pay some price for doing this? If, as they said, actually said they did it.
I think there is no doubt that when any foreign government tries to impact the integrity of our elections, that we need to take action, and we will, at a time and place of our own choosing. Some of it may be explicit and publicized, some of it may not be.
Okay, what needs to be understood here in this, and I'm not playing a large chunk of this stuff here, just a small bit, because the link is below. I've left a link to this. Again, we're dealing with something that could be a copyright issue. I don't want to play a large chunk of it, just in case it is a copyright issue. I played just a few short few seconds of this, and need to understand that these interviews are not off the cuff. They're not, as we saw with Hillary Clinton, they're prepared. So Obama knows what the script is. There's a script here. This event is scripted. So the action about do we need to take action with Russia? That's scripted. This is how the declaration of war comes out. This is the declaration. It's done in a very couched manner. But you'll see how it's picked up by Fox News and translated in their perspective. And of course, the person that's going to be interviewed is Tom Bolton, who is a known neocon.
U.S. and Russia. President Obama responding to Russia's alleged interference with the U.S. election process, promising to retaliate. In a press briefing yesterday, spokesperson Josh Earnest pointed to the United States' ability to respond.
The United States retains significant, extensive cyber capabilities that exceed the capabilities that are wielded by any other country in the world. There are a range of proportional responses that the President and his team believe would be an appropriate response.
I want to bring in Ambassador John Bolton. He is former U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations and a Fox News contributor. Ambassador, good to see you.
Glad to be with you.
You know, I almost hate asking this first question because I don't...
So now she's going to talk to Tom Bolton about this, and this is where you'll start seeing the bias come in now. This is where the bias swings in, and this is Fox News here. You think they would be supporting Trump, but well, here's what happens here. There's a large group of neocons in the GOP, like Tom Bolton, who are actually opposed to Donald Trump because Donald Trump represents a change in the UN world order. In other words, Bolton, a lot of the neocons who are Republican, are actually on the left path side of things. They're involved in the pedophilia. They're involved in Pizzagate to some degree. And then this is going to be shown historically, and I will actually produce a video on this that will link towards all the sort of the path of this sort of Pizzagate from early on in American history to recent American history under a variety of different presidents, how this thing sort of creeps forward and involves FBI cover-ups, involves FBI retaliation, the same bits and points where people go missing who have evidence. They meet with an untimely accident, an accident occurs to some of these people, and they end up disappearing or they end up dead. It's all there. It's a little frightening to see what's going on kind of behind the scenes here. And I'm going to line it up so I can just play a very brief bit of it. The link is going to be down below in the description, but I do want you to hear what's going to be said and how it's going to be said. Academia University, going beyond textbooks.
INN, provoke, inform and change. We deal with issues that other networks won't.
Academia University. Open, free, that means no tuition, and no entrance restrictions. Well, I've got everything queued up, so here we go.
This thing is such a mess it just is almost impossible to know where to begin. Russia, China, Iran, North Korea have been conducting cyber espionage and cyber warfare against us for 8 years or more. And
This is the neocon line. This is what was been picked up with Clinton. This is what was there with under George W. Bush. These are the neocons behind George W. Bush who were pushing him into Iraq, into Afghanistan. And they were there under Obama with Clinton. So again, this is not a Clinton thing on its own. It's not Hillary Clinton on her own, on its own. I'll have to go back and start sort of correcting this. There is no more gender under the left anymore. There is no he, she, no mother, father, nothing. So under Hillary Clinton, it is not working alone. Hillary Clinton, is working with the UN. She's part of the UN New World Order. She's an integral cog in it. It is not a mental moron. She's not incapable of doing these things. It's a monster. It's a beast. You can't call it an animal because no animal does this stuff. This is beastly. This is demonic. This is possessed. This is Kabbalistic. This is the left-hand path, which openly consorts with demons. It's the dark hand. It's the dark path. It's the path to darkness. This is who Hillary Clinton is. This is who the UN is. These are who the progressives are. This is progressiveness, the progressive ideology on both the left and the right, the social ideology on both the left and the right. Both of them are involved in spirit cooking. Both of them are involved in Kabbalahism. Both of them involve pedophilia, the ritual sacrifices, the sex magic. And the thing is, the sex magic is understand this, what the sex magic is. Go look it up, then go look at the Vril Society. How they feel under the Vril Society that children have the special energy, that in order to get this energy from these children, you have to, one, rape them and then kill them. This is spirit cooking. This is what we find all the way throughout from both the Nazis and the communists. The Nazis are the right side of the progressives. The communists are the left side of the progressives. There is a left-right dichotomy. But both, because they're the same coin, the progressives, you have the one coin, progressive. The right is the nationalist. They talk about nationalism. They talk about protecting the nation, about national security, the neocon. The left talks about communism, about re-education, education camps. That's the Clinton side of things, the left side. And you all understand how these both sides can work together on particular issues of common interest, but at the same time still be opposed to each other, because they say once the common interest is done and out of the way, we can then settle the differences ourselves, between ourselves. In other words, they're getting rid of the things that they both agree need to be gotten rid of. When that stuff that they need to get rid of, being, when they've gotten rid of the things they want to get rid of, then the other issues come into focus and are dealt with. And this is what Tom Bolton is, this is what he's talking about, and we'll go a little bit further into this now.
Response throughout has been inadequate. So to say now, finally, somebody's gotten the president's attention is, I guess, better late than never. But I think this whole issue has become so politicized that, frankly, I don't think you can take at face value anything that he, Secretary of State Kerry, the press flack at the White House, or anybody else says on it. I don't think we're going to get straight answers until after the 20th of January. It's why I thought we need the congressional investigations to go forward, and why I've said this before, but I view it increasingly as the man on whom the spotlight will focus will be Mike Pompeo when he's confirmed at the CIA, to say what exactly this evidence shows.
Ambassador Bolton, it's Dagan McDowell. Should the White House, should the government have done more, given what we know about Russia hacking the DNC, for example? Because the White House is saying that President Obama not only complained of Vladimir Putin to his face in September, but that he warned him of consequences. And then we did have James Clapper, who came out, the Director of National Intelligence, and did blame Russia on October 7th. But leading up to the election, should Washington have done more?
Well, who believes anything that Obama says? Was it another red line, or was this a pink line, or kind of a mauve line? I mean, the fact is, the president has, by his inaction with respect to Russian military aggression in Ukraine, and the weak and inadequate sanctions.
He's now drawn that line that Russia was the aggressor in Ukraine. But the thing is, we know that Russia was not the aggressor in Ukraine. It was the United States who overthrew the elected government of Ukraine. We know this, but again, what's happening here, and you see how the commentator now talks about the Russian hacking of the DNC as fact. And you'll see how this interview moves from the Trump anti-establishment side of things into an establishment argument. Now, supporting the establishment, supporting the UN New World Order that Hillary Clinton represents. And this is why you see GOP members flipping their votes for Trump to Hillary.
That were imposed, his inability to draw the line with Russia building a new air base in Latakia in Syria, and on and on and on. The one thing that Obama has said that the Russians remember was during the famous off-mic comment to former Russian President Medvedev during the campaign, when Obama said to Medvedev, "You tell Vladimir after the election I can be more flexible." That's the one message that they've understood. And until that the occupant of the Oval Office changes, nothing in Russian behavior is going to change.
So one of my questions, I feel like it's like the Goldilocks treatment of Russia. Some people are like, you're too hard on it. Others are saying you're too soft on it. And there's so much criticism on everybody's position on it. What do you think the right thing to do is to get this under control?
Well, and let me say, I've spoken to a number of Republican senators, plural, in the past 2 days, who have actually looked at the intelligence. And they do believe that it was the Russian government that did it. I haven't looked at the intelligence, neither have any of you.
Did what, Ambassador?
We're engaged in these hacks that we've been talking about against the DNC and against the others. Now, it's not clear, and in fact you can probably say with some confidence that it didn't affect the election. But let me put this question to you. If Japan had attacked Pearl Harbor on December the 7th, 1941, none of its bombs had hit, all of its torpedoes had missed, no Americans were killed or wounded, and none of our ships were sunk, would we just say, oh well, no harm, no foul, we'll just forget about it? Of course not. It was an act of war. And if, in fact, the Russians have done this, added together with everything else they've done, this isn't something to walk away from.
Here's the saber rattling, here's the declaration of war, this is the support of Obama, this is the support of Clinton. And this is why you have the GOP, the Electoral College recount. This whole what they're afraid of is the GOP will turn around because there's enough members in the GOP who believe that this coming war with Russia is a prophecy from God. This is why I include Lisa Haven in my source, because I can watch the view of the Christian right, and how the view of the Christian right in terms of their prophecies are being manipulated to further the goals of the globalists, of the Clinton UN New World Order. I've left the link to this video down below. It's from Fox News. I encourage you to go watch it, and you can understand now how they're saber rattling. Now, I need to say this, as I said before, I don't take sides on these issues. You look at the facts, you look at what's going on. And you also have to understand the history. What you need to understand is that the fundamental Christians, the Christians on the right, the Christian right, are not fundamentally Christians. They're pagans. The thing that occurred that split the church, the Great Schism, in 1054, that split the church into East and West, was that the West wanted to create its own form of church, and they redefined what Christ was. And in that process of redefining Christ, they removed Christ from the earth and said that all of the things that belong to Christ, including the dominion of Christ of the earth, belongs to the papacy. In other words, they gave the papacy this absolute authority, a God authority, a vicar of Christ, which in Greek means antichrist. The term vicar is synonymous in Greek with the term anti. So the Pope literally titles himself Antichrist. And then proceeds to fundamentally change the nature of the church, the underlying theology of the church, which defines what religious practices you do and you don't do. This included reinstituting and reestablishing slavery. Into this, as they began the sort of, and in many ways, they ended up pulling from a lot of these Kabbalist texts. When they went into the Middle East on this whole thing of the Crusades, they really ended up destroying most of the Christian churches in there. Where instead of taking back the Middle East for the Christians, they really were colonizing. This was the first wars of colonization by Europe. And again, it was Germanic. It was a Germanic-led thing. It was led by the papacy, which was Germanic. This is why it sits in the Vatican, not really in Rome, but the Vatican is outside. It's sort of northwest of Rome type of thing. And the reason why it is there, because it's not part of Italy, it's part of Germany. These were the Germans involved here. So in Germany as well, this is where you see the Sabbatai-Sevi, the Canaanite Jew, who redefined things in terms of what Judaism is going to be. You see this line come up from there that talks about Judaism in terms of Baal, in terms of the sex worship and sex magic, including the sacrifice of children for the vril. And they influence people like Martin Luther, who end up rewriting the Christian Bible, and then they say, well, no, that you have to use the Hebrew version in order to get things done properly. The text received by Martin Luther from his rabbinical friends was the modified text from the Canaanite Jews. And this text had been modified enough so that when they read the prophecies, and they're doing the end time prophecy, and this is what Lisa Haven does, and a lot of these sort of the so-called Christians on the right. Now remember, the Canaanite Jews are not the Jews of the Old Testament; they're pagans. So when they passed the Torah, their Torah, the Canaanite Torah, onto the Protestants Protestants pick up a pagan version of the Torah, the pagan version of the Old Testament. And this is how the Protestants, who didn't really change a lot of the theology from the Roman Catholics, which basically brought in an anti-Christian, a pagan version of Christ. In other words, Christ was the facade, but underneath was everything was about paganism. It was about being about the Antichrist. And this is how the Vril Society and the Nazis had a Catholic face to it, but when you went underneath to see what was actually there, you found that they were pagans, that they were practicing Kabbalistic rites. This is where the sex magic comes in. This is, you go and look at the Vril and see what the Vril Society was about and what Vril was about. And you'll see that children are directly the targets of Vril, because there is viewed that children have the largest amounts of Vril in them, this sort of mystical energy. And you get this mystical energy out at the point of orgasm. This is where the sex magic comes in. This was passed up to the Protestants. And so today, they identify the enemies of Christ in terms of this end times coming where they're going to have the rapture. They view it with Russia as the enemy of Israel, not understanding that the Christian church, the original Christian church, the Eastern Church, the reason why the papacy did what it did was because that the original church, instead of going from Constantinople to Germany, to where the Emperor Charlemagne was, went north to Kiev. Kiev was the next major city, the next Jerusalem. Right? It was Jerusalem, Constantinople, and the next one was Kiev. Kiev was the third Jerusalem. It was supposed to go to the papacy. It was supposed to go to the Vatican, but it didn't. It went to Kiev, Russia. And this is the conflict between the West and the East. The West has always taken a papal position that the East stole, that Russia stole the mantle of Christianity. And this has been the anti-Christian view. This is the Western view. The Western view of Russia is the anti-Christian view of things. They don't understand that the communism that entered Russia was produced by the United States. All you have to do is go back and look at what was going on with the Skull and Bone Society. You'll find that they were behind the communist revolution, that they were behind and involved in World War II on both sides of the equation. Then you understand now that the Christians today, these so-called Christian right, are not fundamentally Christian. There's an 1800-year gap between them, between Christ and these Christians. That they follow off of this Kabbalistic text. They're following the Jews. They think that is Israel, because Israel has not been restored. The Israel that is today is the Canaanite Israel. They're Canaanites who are the Zionists. They're Canaanite Jews. This is why Baal, and this is why the sexual worship is there. This is why you find it in Hollywood. This is how Pizzagate connects to everything here. And there's also the Franklin savings and loan scandal. Go take a look at the Franklin savings and loan scandal. You'll find what do you find there? The Franklin savings and loan, Pizzagate. You'll find the exact same mechanisms going on with the Franklin savings and loan as you have with Pizzagate, but this time the Franklin savings and loans leads to the Bahamian Grove. Anyways, that's it for this edition of INN's Tweetline Plus. Please pass this around, send it to people. You can, because it's Creative Commons. Use the content that's in here if you want to, because it's Creative Commons. You can share this around. My channel is not monetized, and I do not copyright my materials. I am not part of the establishment at all. Bye. Academia University. Going beyond textbooks.
INN. Provoke. Inform and change. We deal with issues that other networks won't.
Academia University. Open, free, that means no tuition, with no entrance restrictions.
Welcome to the library, and I am the librarian.
I am the professor. And professor of what? Professor of physics.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light?
Free speech rules here at Democratic Earth.